What happens when the world's most unpredictable talk show meets the world's most unfiltered pop icon? Before we dive into this cinematic unraveling of tension, secrets, and a showdown no one saw coming, make sure you subscribe to Stage View, like this video, and drop a comment, because what you're about to witness is the kind of drama that rewrites everything you thought you knew about The View and about Miley Cyrus. It began on a morning that felt too calm to stay that way. The View's studio, normally buzzing with the light-hearted chatter of pre-show prep, carried a strange electricity in the air. Producers moved quicker than usual, whispering behind clipboards, glancing at monitors again and again. Something was off. From the rafters to the front row seats, there was this sense, unspoken but heavy, that the show was about to step into territory it couldn't turn back from. Miley Cyrus walked into the building with that familiar mixture only she could pull off, a swagger of fearlessness and an undertone of something deeper, something unresolved. Her boots clicked against the polished floor as she entered the backstage hallway, her hair pulled into a loose platinum ponytail, sunglasses still on even though the studio lights weren't hitting her yet. She nodded to a makeup artist, offered a tight smile to one of the producers, but her mind was far away from small talk. She wasn't here for niceties. She wasn't here for a fun morning chat. She was here because something had been brewing for years, an unspoken strain between herself and one of daytime television's strongest personalities, Whoopi Goldberg. Most viewers had no idea, but behind the scenes, there had always been a tension, brief remarks, passing comments, misunderstandings that never got patched, and segments where the energy turned colder than anyone dared acknowledge. Miley had ignored it for a long time, choosing to laugh it off. But then came the episode clip that had gone viral only a week earlier. Whoopi, during a discussion about celebrity responsibility, made a remark that hit a nerve across the internet. "I think some stars just thrive off chaos," Whoopi had said. "Especially the ones who reinvent themselves every 5 minutes. Authenticity gets lost in the performance." She hadn't named Miley. She didn't need to. The internet connected dots within minutes, and by sunset, the clip was flooding timelines with speculation, outrage, and memes twisting the statement into something much sharper. Miley hadn't planned to respond. But then, an invitation arrived from The View, and something in her snapped into place. She accepted. Now she was here. Backstage, a production assistant approached her with a tablet. "Miley, here's the segment outline. You're joining at the top of the second block, but they might shift you earlier if the conversation." She stopped, seeing the look on Miley's face. "Right. You already know the topic." Miley smirked, taking the tablet but not looking at it. "Trust me, I'm ready." In the studio, Whoopi sat at the center of the table, as she always did, calm and collected. She had her glasses on, leaned slightly back in her chair, scanning her note cards. But every few seconds, she'd glance toward the offstage entrance, where she knew her guest would appear. Joy Behar muttered under her breath, "You think today's gonna get rocky?" Whoopi didn't look up. "Depends on how she decides to play it." Sunny Hostin, adjusting her mic, added, "The internet's going to explode either way." Sarah Haynes gave a nervous laugh. "And we're in the splash zone." The audience slowly filled their seats, clutching warm coffee cups, fanning themselves under the studio lights. None of them knew exactly what they were about to witness, but they felt the tension, even if they couldn't name it. Something sharp hung in the air, like the moment before a storm cracks the sky open. When the intro music hit, the energy snapped into place. The cameras rolled, the applause sign flashed, and the hosts launched into their usual opening banter. But something was different. Whoopi's voice sounded steady, but a faint tightness wrapped around her words. "And coming up," she announced during the transition, "we have the one and only Miley Cyrus joining us for a conversation I know all of you have been very curious about." A ripple moved through the crowd, excitement mixed with confusion. Then the show went to commercial. Backstage, a producer approached Miley. "Okay, you're on in 30 seconds. Any last thing you want to go over?" Miley took off her sunglasses slowly, revealing eyes that were equal parts fire and vulnerability. "Yeah," she said with a shrug. "Let's do this." The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2. The commercial faded. The applause sign lit up, and Whoopi Goldberg looked straight at the camera. "Welcome back. Please help us give a warm welcome to Miley Cyrus." The audience erupted, cheering, clapping, shouting her name like she was walking onto a stage, not a battleground. Miley stepped out, waving, smiling as she crossed toward the table. But her smile hid something sharp, something coiled. The hosts could feel it immediately. She sat down gracefully, crossing one leg over the other, adjusting her mic. Thanks for having me. Whoopi gave a small nod. Always good to have you. There was something in the tone, polite but guarded. Miley heard it. Everyone heard it. Joy jumped in with a light question about Miley's music, trying to set a softer tone. Miley answered politely, but there was a stiffness to her words, like her mind was waiting for something specific. Waiting for the moment. Sunny brought up Miley's recent award show performance, which had gone viral for its raw emotion. Miley spoke openly about reinvention, about healing, about finding her voice again. The audience leaned in, hanging on to her words. Everything seemed fine. Too fine. Until Sarah Haynes shifted the conversation. So Miley, she said with an innocent tilt of her head, last week there was a little, online buzz about a moment from our show. Something Whoopi said sparked a lot of conversation about authenticity and reinvention. Did you see that? Joy's eyes widened. Sunny straightened her posture. Whoopi exhaled through her nose. Miley turned toward Sarah slowly, like a lion noticing movement in tall grass. Yeah, she said. I saw it. A hush fell over the room. Even the camera operators leaned slightly forward. Whoopi spoke up, her voice calm. Just to be clear, Miley, I wasn't talking about you. Miley's eyes locked onto hers. You don't have to say someone's name for everyone to know who you're talking about. A sharp gasp rippled through the audience. Whoopi held her gaze. I was making a general point. People took it out of context. People took it exactly how you said it, Miley replied, her voice low but steady. And honestly, I'm not here to fight. But I'm also not going to pretend it didn't feel like a shot. Sunny leaned forward slightly. What about it felt targeted to you? Miley inhaled deeply, choosing her words carefully. When you build your entire life on being open, on evolving, people call that chaos. They call it attention-seeking. But reinvention isn't chaos, it's survival. And when someone you've admired for years suggests you're losing authenticity because you're growing. Yeah, that hits. Whoopi blinked once, slowly. I didn't say you were losing authenticity. No, Miley said softly. You said some stars reinvent themselves every 5 minutes. And you said it like reinvention was a flaw. The audience murmured again, some sympathetic, some thrilled by the unfolding tension. Whoopi straightened in her seat. Look, I've been in this business a long time. And I've seen people crumble because they chase reinvention instead of foundation. That's what I was talking about. Miley's expression shifted. Hurt flickered behind the strength. But you weren't talking about people. You were talking about me. And you know it. The table fell silent. Joy moved uncomfortably in her chair. Sunny observed with razor focus. Sarah looked like she regretted ever asking the question. Whoopi didn't break eye contact. If I wanted to talk about you specifically, I would have said your name. Miley leaned forward slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. Sometimes not saying it is worse. The audience's collective breath felt like it was held in a suspended bubble. No one moved. No one blinked. Finally, Whoopi spoke again. You're a grown woman. You've made choices. You've owned them. And you've been through fire and come out the other side. I respect that. But I'm not going to apologize for having an opinion. Miley nodded once. And I'm not asking for an apology. I'm asking for honesty. The words landed like a strike of lightning. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate. Whoopi's jaw tightened. I am being honest. Then say it, Miley said. The entire studio froze. You could hear the faint hum of the stage lights, the shifting of someone's shoe in the front row, the barely contained heartbeat of a moment seconds away from exploding. Whoopi looked at her, expression unreadable. Say what? That you meant me. Whoopi didn't answer immediately. Behind her calm posture, something rigid formed, defensiveness, pride, maybe even regret. But she wasn't bending. I said what I said, Whoopi replied. Miley sat back slowly, her eyes darkening. Then so will I. For the first time since she walked on stage, her voice cracked. Not from weakness, but from the weight of years she had swallowed, jokes she had brushed off, assumptions she had ignored. I've spent my whole life being told I'm too much or not enough, she said. Too wild, too emotional, too loud, too open. And every time I grow, someone says I'm pretending. But the truth is, I've reinvented myself because life reinvented me. Loss reinvented me. Pain reinvented me. Love reinvented me. And I won't let anyone, even someone I respect, reduce that to chaos. The crowd erupted into applause, loud, surprising, emotional. Whoopi looked at her, and for the first time since the confrontation began, her expression shifted. A flicker of something human, something recognizing the vulnerability in Miley's voice. But just as the energy seemed to soften, a producer off-camera signaled frantically. They were out of time. Whoopi looked toward the camera. "We have to go to break." The audience buzzed, shocked, unsettled, hungry for more. The screen faded to commercial. But the real storm was only beginning. When the cameras cut, the studio didn't exhale. It held its breath even tighter. There was no applause sign now, no smiling cue from producers. Just tension, thick and unmoving, circling the table like smoke with no exit. The hosts remained in their seats, frozen in that lingering aftershock of what had just unfolded. The audience murmured in low whispers, unsure whether to speak, blink, or simply process. And Miley, she didn't look away from Whoopi, not even once. A stage manager hurried over with water bottles, his hands trembling so slightly he hoped no one noticed. You all good?" he asked, directing the question at anyone who might answer. No one did. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, her hands clasped in front of her face, elbows on the table. She wasn't angry. She wasn't shaken. She was calculating, processing. A woman who'd spent decades navigating live television wasn't easily rattled. But something about Miley's words had uncovered a nerve she hadn't expected to feel. Joy finally broke the silence. "So that happened." Sarah's voice followed, barely above a whisper. "I thought the question would soften the tension, not ignite it." Sunny shot her a look. "Sarah, honey, that question was gasoline." "I didn't know." Sarah hissed, cheeks reddened with embarrassment. Meanwhile, Miley stood up. The moment she pushed her chair back, the producers straightened like soldiers preparing for impact. She didn't storm off. She didn't walk away dramatically. She simply stood steady and composed. But the energy around her shifted, like a current sparking to life. A producer approached her. "Miley, take a breather backstage before we go back on. We can adjust the next block, shift the conversation." "No," Miley said, adjusting her mic pack. "Don't shift anything. If we're doing this on air." The producer blinked. "Are you sure? Because, this is live daytime television." "I'm aware," Miley replied calmly. Another producer, older, more experienced, stepped in. "You know you're allowed to walk away if you feel the segment is getting unfair." Miley lifted her chin. "Walking away has never solved anything. I'm not here to run. I'm here to finish." Her voice held that unshakable resolve. The kind people either admired or feared in celebrities who refused to be controlled by PR. Across the room, Whoopi removed her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Sunny watched Miley closely, her lawyer mind tracing the shape of this unfolding conflict like a case file. Joy whispered something to Sarah, but their voices faded into the background. The audience had no idea whether they were supposed to stay quiet or fill the room with nervous conversation. But they all saw the same truth. The break wasn't cooling anything down. It was heating everything up. The crew hurried, rechecking cues, adjusting cameras, rewriting lines on teleprompters. Miley stayed where she was, arms crossed lightly, eyes on the table, on Whoopi. Not with malice. Not with anger. With a determination that felt almost personal. Finally, the stage manager announced, 30 seconds. The audience straightened. The hosts shifted in their seats. Producers gave their final frantic signals. When Miley returned to her chair, she didn't sit the same way. She didn't slouch, didn't relax. She sat upright, hands interlocked, looking at Whoopi with unwavering clarity. 10 seconds. Sunny leaned in slightly, whispering to Miley, "Just remember, you control your voice." Not the moment. Miley offered her a grateful half-smile. "I know. 5, 4, 3. The screens brightened. The lights sharpened. The crowd hushed. 2, 1. The view returned from commercial break with tension, so thick it felt like another layer in the air. Whoopi was the first to speak. "We're back," she said, her tone calm, maybe too calm. "And before the break, Miley and I had a spirited conversation." The audience chuckled, but it wasn't humor. They were releasing pressure. Miley looked at her, but didn't interrupt. Whoopi continued, "I want to make one thing clear, especially to our viewers. I respect Miley. I've always respected her." The crowd murmured. Sunny glanced at Whoopi with cautious curiosity. "But," Whoopi added, "I'm going to stand by what I said. Reinvention can be a beautiful thing, but it can also be destructive. It depends on the person. It depends on the intention." Miley inhaled slowly, nodding as if allowing Whoopi her space before speaking. I agree, Miley said. Reinvention can be destructive. Trust me, I've lived it. But you don't get to decide that someone's growth isn't real just because you don't understand it. Whoopi didn't react at first. Then, softly but firmly, she asked, Do you think I don't understand it? Miley looked directly into her eyes. I think you judged it. A hush fell again. The audience leaned in. Whoopi didn't break eye contact. I judged what I saw. And what I've seen over the years is someone who's been through a lot, but also someone who has sometimes leaned into shock value. That's not a criticism, it's an observation. Miley nodded slowly. And I've leaned into shock value. Absolutely. But that's not all I am. That's not all I ever was. And it's frustrating when people boil me down to the wild girl from 2013 like nothing's changed or evolved. Sunny chimed in gently. Growth is complicated, isn't it? Miley gave a small smile. It's messy. It's loud. It's painful. And people who haven't lived it might think it's just chaos. But it's survival. Whoopi's expression softened slightly, but her voice stayed firm. And sometimes survival looks like running in circles. Miley's brows pulled together. Is that what you think I'm doing? Whoopi sighed. I think sometimes you're still figuring out who you are. And that's not a bad thing. It's just reality. Miley took a moment, an actual full moment, before responding. Her throat tightened, not from anger, but reflection. I am figuring out who I am, she admitted. But I'm doing it honestly. If my path confuses people, I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is being dismissed. Not by you, not by anyone. Sunny leaned back, absorbing every word. Joy watched Whoopi, trying to anticipate where she might go next. Sarah tentatively raised a hand to interject, then lowered it again. Whoopi finally spoke. Miley, look, I may not understand every version of you, and maybe I did judge some parts of your transformation, but it wasn't personal. Miley gave a faint, bittersweet smile. It felt personal. There was a beat, a long, painful beat. Whoopi exhaled, her voice dropping. Because maybe part of it was. The room froze. Every pair of eyes widened. Even the cameraman pulled back slightly, zooming in, sensing something seismic was unfolding. Miley blinked. What do you mean? Whoopi shifted in her seat. When I see you, I see someone who reminds me of myself when I was younger, trying to make everyone understand her, trying to force the world to accept versions of her that kept changing. And it took me years to stop trying to please everyone. The admission caught everyone off guard, even Miley. So yes, Whoopi continued, sometimes when I see the headlines about you or the reinventions, I get protective. Maybe too protective. Maybe I judge because I don't want to see you burned the way I was burned. Miley stared at her, visibly shaken. Her throat tightened again, but this time not from confrontation, from recognition. From understanding. Why didn't you ever say that? Miley whispered. Whoopi shrugged slightly. Because we're not in the business of vulnerability on this stage. Sunny smirked softly. We can be. Joy chimed in. Well, sometimes. The audience laughed lightly, breaking the tension for a moment. Miley leaned forward. Whoopi, I never wanted to fight with you. I've looked up to you since I was a kid. I just needed you to see me. Whoopi's eyes glinted, not with tears, but with something close. I do see you. I always have. The air shifted, not melting, not dissolving, but transforming. The hostility that had filled the studio was replaced with something raw, emotional, human. But before anyone could sit in that moment, Sunny asked what everyone in the audience was thinking. So where does that leave this conversation? Because I think America's watching and wondering whether you two are good, or whether we're just getting started. The audience erupted in laughter and light applause, but tension lingered beneath it. Miley and Whoopi exchanged a look, an unspoken truce, tentative but real. Miley sighed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Honestly, I don't know yet. Whoopi nodded. Neither do I. But something in their voices suggested the story wasn't over. Not even close. And the producers knew it. The audience knew it. The internet, already clipping, tweeting, streaming, definitely knew it. The stage manager pointed again. 30 seconds to break. Sunny took the final line of the segment. Stay tuned. Because after the break, I think we're going to get deeper. Whoopi added, much deeper. And as the show cut to commercial again, the audience buzzed louder than before, sensing they were witnessing something bigger than daytime drama. They weren't just watching a conversation. They were watching a reckoning. When the commercial break swallowed the studio in its artificial calm, The real storm had already begun crackling beneath the surface. No one moved right away. Not the hosts, not the producers, not even the crew gripping their headsets with white-knuckled anticipation. It was as if the room needed a moment to recalibrate, to relearn gravity. Miley sat quietly, her fingers tapping a slow rhythm against the table, a barely there tremor of adrenaline she couldn't hide. She wasn't angry. She wasn't shaken. She was lit up from the inside, raw, exposed, still vibrating from Whoopi's unexpected confession. It had struck her somewhere she didn't know she still kept locked. Whoopi, for her part, didn't speak either. She leaned back in her chair, hands folded loosely on her lap, eyes closed for just a second, like she was centering herself, grounding through a silence deeper than any argument could reach. Joy and Sarah exchanged glances that said everything. This wasn't over. This was the eye of the hurricane. Sunny took a small sip of water, then leaned slightly toward Miley. "You okay?" she asked softly. Miley nodded. "Yeah, just it's a lot." Sunny gave a supportive half-smile. Truth has a weight to it. Miley let out a breath, half-laugh, half-sigh. "No kidding." A producer approached the table, nervous energy written all over his face. We're rewriting the next block. We're thinking of focusing on the idea of reinvention, maybe discussing the pressures of the industry." "No," Whoopi interrupted, opening her eyes. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air with authority. "We're not pivoting." The producer blinked. "You want to continue this conversation?" "Yes," Whoopi said simply. "We started something. We finish it." Joy raised her eyebrows. "Well, that's very sensei Whoopi of you." Whoopi ignored the comment. Miley folded her hands together, grounding herself. "I agree. We're already in it. Might as well keep going." The producer hesitated. "Just remember, we do have limits on how heated things can get. This is daytime television." Sunny smirked. "Daytime has evolved." The producer rubbed his forehead. Apparently, the audience, still in their seats, still buzzing, seemed split between loving every second and wondering if they should be concerned. Then the countdown started again. Miley inhaled deeply. Whoopi straightened. Joy cracked her knuckles dramatically. Sunny prepared herself like she was stepping into court. Sarah whispered, "Here we go," under her breath. 5 seconds. The lights sharpened. The air tightened. 3, 2, 1. The view returned once more. This time with a silence so expectant that the first camera sweep felt like a drone shot in a movie right before the confrontation reaches its peak. Whoopi looked directly into the camera. "We're back, and we're going to continue the conversation exactly where we left off, because we believe in honesty here." The audience applauded, not the excited kind, but the thoughtful, anticipatory kind. Sunny leaned forward, directing the conversation with the precision of someone threading a needle. "Before the break, both of you shared perspectives that came from real experiences, real emotions. I think what the viewers want to know is, what's the heart of this tension? Where did it come from?" The table fell into a contemplative silence as Miley gathered her thoughts. "It didn't start last week," Miley said finally. "People think one comment set everything off, but the truth is, it's been building for years." Whoopi nodded slowly. "I felt that too." Miley looked at her directly. "It started when I was young. When I was on Hannah Montana, I watched this show all the time. And every time my name came up, it was like the world had a magnifying glass over every move I made." Joy chimed in gently. "Well, you were one of the biggest stars on the planet. Everyone was watching you." "I know," Miley said. "But I was a kid. And when you're a kid being judged like an adult, the lines blur. I remember one segment from years ago. You probably don't, but it stayed with me. It was about that photo shoot I did when I was 15. There was a whole conversation about whether I was being too grown, too provocative. And, Whoopi, you said something that stuck with me." Whoopi blinked, taken aback. "What did I say?" "You said I needed to be careful, that I was on a dangerous path." Joy shifted in her seat. Sarah winced sympathetically. Miley continued, her voice soft but steady. "I know you were trying to be cautionary, but when you're 15 and everyone's judging you, even well-intentioned warnings feel like knives." Whoopi absorbed this silently. Miley swallowed. "I spent years trying to outrun the version of me that everyone thought I was. And every time I did something new, it was like people said, 'See? She's spiraling.' Even when I wasn't. Especially when I wasn't." Whoopi finally spoke. "Miley, I don't remember exactly what I said. But if it hurt you, I'm sorry. That wasn't my intention." Miley didn't look away. Thank you. But this week's comment, it reopened that old wound. The audience murmured. It was the kind of raw, human exposure that daytime rarely allowed to breathe. Sunny interjected. Whoopi, earlier you said you felt protective of Miley, in part because you saw pieces of your younger self in her. Do you think that protection ever shifted into skepticism? Whoopi considered the question deeply. I think, sometimes when you care about someone's trajectory from afar, you start judging out of concern rather than criticism. But it doesn't always come across that way. Joy nodded. That's very true. Concern can sound like judgment if you're not careful. Miley spoke up again. I never thought you hated me. I just thought, maybe you didn't believe in me. Whoopi's eyes softened. I do believe in you. I've always believed in your talent. What I struggled with was the fear that the world would chew you up the way it chewed me up when I was coming up. The audience fell into thoughtful silence. And then Miley said something no one expected. I wish you had said that years ago. Whoopi inhaled a slow, heavy breath. Maybe I should have. But back then, I wasn't good at being open. I carried a lot of scars that made me guarded. Sunny nodded sympathetically. Joy looked down at the table. Sarah blinked rapidly to keep herself from getting emotional on camera. Miley's voice grew gentler. I wasn't asking you to protect me. I just wanted you to see me as more than a headline. Whoopi nodded. And I see you. Fully. The good, the messy, the evolving. All of it. Something broke, quietly, softly, between them. A wall that had stood for years began to crack, letting light through the fractures. Sunny leaned back, sensing a shift. There's a larger conversation here. About how society treats young women in entertainment. How reinvention is seen as instability rather than evolution. Miley nodded. Exactly. When a man reinvents himself, he's called an artist. When a woman reinvents herself, she's called unstable. The audience erupted in applause. Joy added, people forget that reinvention is human. Everyone does it, celebrities or not. Sarah chimed in. The difference is, Miley has to do it with the whole world watching. Whoopi then turned directly to Miley, her voice lower, more grounded. Can I ask you something? And I mean this genuinely. Miley nodded. Ask me. Do you feel like you're still reinventing because you're searching? Or because you're healing? The question hung in the air like a shimmering thread. Miley took a long breath before speaking. I think I reinvent because I grow. Every version of me is real. Every version is honest. And none of them cancel the others out. I don't reinvent to escape. I reinvent to become. The audience clapped again, this time not out of excitement, but connection. Sunny leaned in. That's beautiful. Miley smiled, small, humble, sincere. Thanks. Whoopi nodded. Then I was wrong about one thing. Miley raised her eyebrows slightly. What's that? That you reinvent every 5 minutes. You reinvent every chapter. And maybe I haven't been paying close enough attention to the story. Miley's eyes glistened, not with tears, not quite, but with something that felt close to release. I appreciate you saying that, she murmured. The tension that had held the studio hostage for nearly an hour began slowly unwinding. Not disappearing, but transforming into something more reflective, more intimate, more human. Then Sunny asked the question that shifted the tone once more. Miley, what's the one thing you wish people understood about you that they always seem to get wrong? Miley exhaled, gathering her thoughts carefully. That I'm not out of control. I never was. Even in my wildest moments, I knew exactly what I was doing. People mistake freedom for chaos. The audience snapped in agreement. People think I'm unpredictable, Miley continued. But I'm not. I'm intentionally unpredictable. There's a difference. Whoopi smiled genuinely. There is. Miley turned toward her. And what's the one thing you wish people understood about you? The question caught Whoopi off guard in a way she didn't expect. She paused, thinking deeply before answering. That I'm not as tough as I look. People see strength. They forget I had to learn it. Miley nodded slowly. We're more alike than I thought. Yeah, Whoopi said softly. We are. The moment hung in the air, full of fragile honesty. So different from the earlier storm, yet connected to it like calm is connected to thunder. Then the stage manager signaled. 1 minute to break. Sunny looked into the camera. We'll be right back. And when we return, we're diving into what healing, growth, and reinvention really mean in this industry and beyond. The audience applauded again, but this time with warmth, not adrenaline. As the screen faded to commercial, the studio didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like a confessional, but they had no idea. The most intense moment was still waiting for them in the final segment. The final commercial break felt like the quiet before a final verdict. Everything in the studio, every breath, every shifting footstep, every whispered side conversation, seemed to be bracing for a moment that hadn't arrived yet. Producers moved like ghosts, adjusting microphones, rechecking segment notes, peering at monitors that displayed four faces still thick with emotion. Miley sat back in her chair, shoulders finally easing, her breathing deeper now, more grounded. She didn't look defeated. She didn't look triumphant. She looked present, fully present, like someone who had walked into a fire not to burn, but to be seen walking through it. Whoopi sat across from her, glasses off again, eyes steady but softened, the lines around them revealing not tension, but reflection. Maybe even regret, in the most human way. A regret not of wrongdoing, but of the years spent misunderstood on both sides. Sunny tapped her pen gently on the table, deep in thought. Joy glanced between Miley and Whoopi like a commentator waiting for the next emotional swerve. Sarah inhaled and exhaled slowly, hands folded, palms lightly sweating from the weight of what had unfolded. The audience whispered among themselves, quiet, careful, respectful. Even they understood that the show had crossed into territory where typical talk show reactions felt out of place. Then the stage manager's voice cut through the air. 30 seconds. Everyone reset. Everyone shifted into position. But unlike the earlier transitions, no one was pretending anymore. The masks were gone. The scripts were gone. The glossy, controlled shine of daytime television had melted into something raw and unfiltered. This wasn't TV. This was humanity. Live. The countdown lit the screens. 5, 4, 3. Miley looked at Whoopi. Whoopi looked back. 2, 1. The lights flared bright. The view returned. Sunny spoke first, her voice calm yet charged with purpose. Welcome back. We've had an incredibly honest and powerful conversation today. And we want to continue it because vulnerability is not weakness, it's connection. The audience applauded softly, like they knew clapping too loudly might break something delicate. Sunny turned to Miley. Before the break, you talked about how every version of you is real and intentional. But I want to dive deeper. Because reinvention, healing, growth, they're not linear. They're messy. What does healing look like for you now, in this chapter of your life? Miley took a breath, slow, deliberate, almost reverent. Healing for me is finally letting myself rest. Letting myself exist without proving anything. For years, every transformation felt like I was running from the past, running towards something new, running because I thought stillness meant failure. Whoopi watched her closely. But now, Miley continued, I'm learning that stillness isn't failure. It's strength. It's clarity. I'm learning that I don't have to break myself apart to become something new. I can grow without destroying the pieces that came before. The audience murmured in appreciation. Sunny nodded. That's beautiful. Miley's gaze drifted to Whoopi. And maybe I needed today to realize that I don't have to defend every chapter of my life. Some chapters can speak for themselves. Whoopi folded her hands. And maybe I needed today to realize I was looking at your chapters through old lenses. Miley tilted her head. Meaning? Whoopi leaned slightly forward. Meaning I saw a young version of myself in you, but I judged you as if you were me. And that wasn't fair to you. Miley's face softened. I can accept that. Joy jumped in, trying to lighten the emotional density just a bit. You know, if every disagreement in Hollywood went like this, we'd have fewer headlines and more hugs. Laughter rippled through the audience. Gentle laughter, the kind that adds warmth to a conversation instead of cutting it. Sunny turned toward Whoopi. I think viewers would love to know, what changed for you today? Because we could all see it. There was a shift. Whoopi considered the question thoughtfully, turning her gaze momentarily to the audience, then back to Miley. What changed? Miley looked me in the eye and asked for honesty. Not respectability. Not diplomacy. Honesty. And that's rare in this industry. Most people want praise, not truth. Miley smiled faintly. I'll take truth any day. Whoopi nodded. Then maybe I owe you something I haven't said clearly enough. She paused, letting the moment breathe. I didn't call you chaotic because I thought you were unstable. I said it because I saw a world trying to turn you into a spectacle. And it scared me. Miley swallowed hard. Whoopi continued. I've seen brilliance collapse under pressure. I've lived through it. And when I saw you reinvent over and over again, part of me feared you were running from something the world didn't deserve to know. I was wrong to project that onto you. Miley blinked, overwhelmed. Thank you truly. Whoopi shook her head. No. Thank you. For calling me out. For meeting me in the middle. Emotion swelled in the room, quiet, heavy, unmistakably real. Sarah spoke next, her voice unusually steady. This conversation is bigger than the two of you. It's about generations. Expectations. Women being forced into boxes only to be criticized when they break out of them. The audience erupted in applause. Sunny nodded. And it's about how the industry shapes narratives, especially around young women, especially around performers, especially around reinvention. Miley exhaled, a breath she'd been holding for years. I think the world loves when women rise. And they love even more when women fall. But they don't know what to do when we survive. A wave of applause crashed across the room, long and emotional. Whoopi added softly, survival confuses people who expect you to break. Miley locked eyes with her. But I'm not breaking. Whoopi smiled, steady and proud. No, you're not. Sunny leaned forward. So, what happens next? Between the two of you. Miley looked at Whoopi. I think we start fresh. Whoopi nodded. I'd like that. Sunny grinned. This might be the most healing moment this table has seen. Joy raised an eyebrow. And we've had a lot of therapy sessions disguised as segments. The audience laughed again, the tension finally dissolving into warmth. But then, Sarah said what no one else dared to ask. Miley, do you forgive her? The silence was instantaneous. The air thinned. Miley didn't answer immediately. She looked at the table. At her hands. At the audience. Then finally at Whoopi. I do, she said quietly. Because forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about letting yourself move forward. Whoopi's face softened in a way rarely seen. She nodded, gratitude flickering in her expression. And you? Joy asked, turning to Whoopi. Do you forgive yourself? Whoopi let out a long breath. I think. I'm working on it. The audience applauded. Loud, emotional, cathartic. Then Sunny added one final question. The kind that wraps a story instead of reopening it. Miley, if you could speak to your younger self, the girl the world judged too quickly, too harshly, what would you tell her now? Miley's eyes glimmered. I'd tell her, you're going to survive. You're going to grow. You're going to become more than they ever expected. And the versions of you that scare them the most will be the ones that save you. The audience rose in a standing ovation. Even Whoopi stood, clapping for her, not as a host, not as a critic, but as someone who finally fully saw her. The applause was thunderous. Emotional. Transformative. The cameras swept the room, capturing faces moved to tears, hosts standing together, and Miley Cyrus, shoulders back, chin high, no longer defending herself, but owning herself. Whoopi placed a hand gently on Miley's shoulder. Miley looked up at her, and they exchanged a quiet, mutual nod. The kind of nod shared by people who have just come through something together, not separately. When the ovation settled, Whoopi turned toward the camera with a voice deeper than before. This is why we do this show. Not for the drama, but for moments like this, moments of truth, understanding, and growth. The audience clapped again. Sunny added warmly, Thank you, Miley, for your honesty today. Joy chimed in. And for not tossing a mug at anyone. The laughter broke the final layer of emotional tension. Miley laughed too. I thought about it. Sarah grinned. We all did. The stage manager signaled the final cue. Whoopi looked to camera. We'll be right back after this. But this time, the break wasn't an escape. It was an exhale. And when the screen finally faded to black, the internet had already exploded. Clips circulating, hashtags trending, commentators dissecting every word. Opinion pieces. Reaction videos. Live tweets. Emotional testimonies from fans who had grown up with Miley and now felt seen in a way they never expected. Inside the studio, as the cameras powered down and the audience slowly filed out, Miley stayed behind for a moment, just breathing, absorbing, grounding. Whoopi approached her. You did good today, she said quietly. You did too, Miley replied. A beat. Truce. Miley asked. Whoopi smiled. Truce. They shook hands, not as celebrity and host, but as women who had finally understood each other. Outside the studio, paparazzi flashed, reporters shouted, and social media burned with wildfire conversation. But inside Miley's heart, something finally settled, and the world had witnessed not a scandal, but the evolution of two women learning, healing, confronting, and growing. And that was the real headline. If you watched this entire cinematic moment unfold, I want to hear from you. What do you think about this confrontation, the honesty, and the resolution? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Stage View for more explosive, dramatic, and emotionally charged stories just like this.